Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Stewart and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my first novel. It releases June 27th with Kregel Publications and it's titled Like a River from Its Course. The book is a historical fiction novel set in World War II Soviet Ukraine. I have an interesting history with that part of the world. I was 15 the first time that I visited the former Soviet Union. I actually went to Minsk, Belarus on a mission trip with Student Venture. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting on the airplane. We had just landed in the country. We hadn't even gotten off the plane yet. And I looked out the window and then I looked at our team leader sitting next to me and I told him, I'm coming back here again. And he kind of smiled and patted me on the hand and said, everybody says that, but nobody's ever come back. And I told him, I'm coming back. I just knew. I hadn't even stepped off the plane, but I knew there was some connection to that part of the world. And by the time I went home 2 weeks later, I could speak a little bit of the language and I had fallen in love with that area. So the next year, I did go back with Student Venture. This time we went to Kiev, Ukraine. And while I was there, I met a woman named Maria Ivanovna who had survived World War II. And she had been sent to a German slave labor camp. She was 14 years old and she was there for 2 years. And I heard just a little snippet of her story and was fascinated by it. I went home, I actually wrote a book report on it that year and got an A. And my senior year of high school, I went back and I got to go to dinner with Maria Ivanovna. And I actually have a picture to show you of me at dinner with Maria Ivanovna. And I'm wearing a very unfortunate sweater and I apologize for the sweater in advance. Apparently I let Mr. Rogers dress me that night, I'm not sure. Anyways, Maria told me her full story and I just knew it was a story that I needed to tell. I graduated from high school that year and I went to Baylor University and I ended up being an English professional writing major. And my senior year at Baylor, one of the classes I took, our only assignment was to write a novel. And so I started, that was my first draft, of writing Maria Ivanovna's story. I really wanted to tell her story of survival. I finished, it was a good enough first draft, but I knew it wasn't quite right. I didn't have all that I needed. So in 2003, I was about 5 months pregnant with my first child, and my husband and I decided if I was going to finish this book and get all the research that I needed done, I needed to go back to Ukraine. So I jumped on a plane, quite pregnant. My mom came with me just in case anything went wrong. And for a month, I toured the country of Ukraine, speaking to hundreds of veterans. I spoke to men like this who fought against the Nazis in Leningrad and survived. I spoke to these 3 men who told me their stories of surviving in the war. I met this woman who was a partisan and who played tricks on the Germans, is the woman in the middle. She played tricks on the Germans just to let them know that they couldn't take her down without a fight. And I got to hear Maria Ivanovna's story one more time. And I came home and I had this arsenal of real life stories from one-on-one interviews. And at first I thought I was going to write a nonfiction book about it, but it wasn't working. And so I started the second draft of my novel. And then I had a baby, and you know how babies slow things down. And then I had another one, and then I had another one, and I couldn't find the time, and I couldn't quite find the right voices. And then about 5 years ago, it just started to click. I found the stories that I needed to tell. I picked the pieces from stories that I knew I wanted to fictionalize and tell. And I found my voice as a writer, and I began writing more. And about that time, my husband and I started the process to adopt a child from Russia. And right in the middle of that process, Russia closed their doors to adoptions for Americans. And I was devastated. I was heartbroken. Since my very first trip to the former Soviet Union, I had wanted to adopt a child from there. And I just felt like the Lord had played a really cruel trick on me. And I was wrestling with God, and I was fighting depression, and I was grieving. And the writing of this novel, finishing this novel, is actually what kept me from falling into the pit of despair. I feel like the Lord gave me all these stories for that moment in time when He knew that I would need them, and that I would need them for healing, and that the written word was going to heal my broken heart. And so in that time, in 2013, I finished writing the book. And then just began the process of looking for an agent or a publisher. And God is faithful. He was faithful to give me the story so many years ago. He was faithful to carry me through that heartbreak and that disappointment. He was faithful to show me that He is good. He is so good. And He is always taking care of us even when life doesn't make sense. And He's faithful to bring this book to fruition, a dream of mine for so long. And so, Like a River from Its Course is based on true stories set in World War II Soviet Ukraine. And I'm really proud of the book. I'm really proud of the way that it came together. And I just really hope that all of you will enjoy these stories as much as I have, especially knowing that they're based on these true stories.